Happy New Year, guys. This is Kabir. Today I'm playing a 10-minute game against Bihoy Al4K. Huh. Weird. So he's playing the accelerated dragon kind of right now. A little bit of a transposition to that line. So generally the move here is c4, the Maroxy bind, as you probably know. But not really in the mood for a positional game, so I'm gonna try and go for more sharp lines. Knight here, so it's kind of like he just played the normal dragon now. I want to put my bishop on e3 or g5, but if I go to e3, then his knight, well, no, his knight can't come here yet because he hasn't put the d6 move. I can go to e3 now. If he plays d3, then I have to play something like, okay, I can't move my queen to d2 because of the knight g3. So I'll play. I don't want my bishop to go to e2. I'd rather it go to c4 actually. So I'll play f3 now. Preparing queen d2 and a castle. Queen d2. Idea is to exchange off these dark square bishops, but obviously I couldn't do that now because bishop here, bishop takes, queen takes, knight, so I just lose a piece. Castle. I'm not really worried about this pawn break. If he takes, then he's just giving me a central pawn. Right now he has two central pawns to my one. So that's the idea of Black Sicilian. He gives up the c pawn so he can have a better control of the center than white. But obviously there's drawbacks to it. Like there's drawbacks and advantages to basically every opening, I suppose. So if I take back with the pawn, then his knight can get into here. But if I take back with the knight, then knight takes, knight takes. Huh. So, should I take back with the pawn and let his knight get into g4? Or should I just take back with the knight? Or should I not take back at all? Not fine, I'll go for the positional game, I suppose. Knight comes into here is fine with me. Oh no, if knight comes into here, then I'll have to draw my bishop back to g1 or something. Yeah. I didn't think about that properly. Knight takes knight might be a good way out of this. Knight takes knight. Queen takes queen. Bishop takes, okay, knight takes knight. Pawn takes knight. Then I can just move my bishop anywhere. Yeah, I think knight takes knight works. Queen takes, okay. So I'll recapture with the bishop so that this knight is defended. Now he takes back here. He's threatening this annoying fork. I kind of have to move my rook. This bishop's overloaded, protecting this knight. I mean, so if I put my bishop on e1 and he takes my knight, I have to recapture with my b pawn because my bishop's needed to overlook this f2 fork, and then I'd have awful pawn structure, so I just kind of need to move a rook, I suppose. That's irritating. I liked my rook on this file. Moving it to g1 just didn't seem to make sense. So I'm thinking maybe bishop c5, now, c4 now. Then rook hf1, but like honestly just e6 takes away that weakness. So when you really don't know what to do, I suppose what you need to do is, okay, he's still gonna go there. Bishop here might be strong. Not sure if that does much though. What's he threatening? He's threatening just check, takes. Well, not that. That loses 2 pieces for a rook, but he's threatening some sort of discovered attack. Maybe knight takes e4 or something. So I guess I have to go for this. That's kind of irritating though, because now he's got this knight here. Oh well, I'll deal with this pawn structure. And he still gets a pawn. Well, at least he has weak dark squares now. The good thing about this now is the only way for him to protect this knight is to play f5. Because if he does anything else, I grab this pawn. And if he plays f5, then my bishop is permanently watching over these squares. And these are some weak squares for white. So I've got a little bit of counterplay myself. I wouldn't say it's enough. I'd say that being a pawn down isn't worth it so much. Okay, now I have ideas of bishop to c4 check. But it's easily met with e6. So if that bishop on c8 were like somewhere else, then I'd have some like serious tactics. But it's watching these squares for now, and he probably realizes that. Could I break through with a move like g4? I think I might be able to. Obviously he can't move the pawn because then I take his knight. Can't move the knight because then I take his pawn here. And if I get my rook here and he doesn't do anything about it, I'll have this windmill tactic with rook g7 check, and then every time I move the rook, his king will be on h8, and I'll be able to swipe up all his material along the 7th rank. So if I'm able to take this pawn, then he can't capture with the g pawn, he'll have to capture with the bishop. If that happens, then what? I don't know. I can't really calculate it fully right now. But okay. Pawn takes. Bishop here. I don't know if that does much. Pawn takes, pawn, rook takes. Okay, my bishop is stronger than that knight, so I need to keep that bishop. Does this help me? Oh, if I put my bishop here, then his knight's able to move. Ooh. Okay, check forces the pawn move. Check forces the pawn move, after which I can take this pawn. For free. Okay. Check. Take this pawn. He takes my bishop. Okay, I thought so. Taking this pawn or take the knight? I'll take the knight just to even out the material. Neither of these pawns can capture. Oh, he could do that. I can technically capture this pawn, can't I? Takes. Oh no, but his king can move and then he'll be able to recapture, so no, that's not a good idea. I'll just recapture here normally. Now I suppose our position's somewhat equal. Yep, so now we're equal on material. I'm low on time. Rook here. Does that do anything really? Not really. I can take this pawn now. Bishop d3. Does bishop d3 do much? How's d5? d5, pawn takes. Nothing to it. I'll just go for the extra material. No reason not to. Now I have a passed pawn. 2 passed pawns. That's gotta be worth something. Threatening to check here and win a pawn somehow. He's not threatening anything, but I am. Check. Turning that h pawn. Yes, the move his king back there. Okay. Can exchange these rooks. Rook takes, rook takes, rook takes. Rook here. He can't protect that pawn. Okay. This is good for me. Oh, no, it's not, because now he has 2 protected pass pawns. That was not smart. Oh well. We'll play this. Race to the finish from our pawns. Go, pawn, go. You can do it. I don't have enough time to calculate this endgame properly. A6. He's just protecting that g5 pawn. Now what do? I don't want to move this too hastily. If I move this pawn before, then he could have cut my king off on the second rank by keeping his rook on h2. That would have been bad. Okay, if I play a7, now what does he do? I don't think he has anything. The only way he can stop the... Yep, okay. So I won there. The only way he was able to stop it is to play rook to f8. Then I had rook to b8, after which he has nothing. After he trades, I get a queen, and this is an easy win. So let's go back and look through the game again, see what I messed up, see what I could have improved, see what he could have improved. Okay, so this is a normal Sicilian line. We transpose into kind of an accelerated dragon line. He has a pawn on g6 before his knight gets f6, not forcing me to defend this e4 pawn with a knight to c3 move, which means I could have grabbed a space advantage by playing c4, but I didn't play the Maroczy bind. I decided to go play it like it was a normal Sicilian Dragon, which is probably a bad thing, because these lines are really sharp. Had he gone with the bishop g7 line, he would have equalized pretty quickly. I think black might even have a small advantage in this line, but I'm not so familiar with my Maroczy bind. Also, I wasn't really in the mood for a positional game, so I decided to go play my own style. Knight to f3. His pawn's on d6, so his bishop's not watching over the g4 square, which means that if his knight ever comes to g4, I can take this knight first and then take the knight. Notice I can't take the knight immediately because I'm just dropping my d4 knight. So I'd make the desperado move, making my queen not overloaded anymore, and then I'd take this knight on g4. So I was able to develop my bishop to e3, not worrying about it getting pushed around by this knight. Playing bishop g7, pawn's still not in d3, d6, but now I wanted to prepare for queenside castling. I couldn't play queen d7 immediately because then I'd have nothing watching over g4, so I'll play this f3 move, reinforcing my e4 pawn, reinforcing this g4 square at the same time. Castle, queen e2, d5. So this pawn break I didn't really spend enough time calculating. I just figured, oh, if he takes, then I'll take. And I have the same center control as he does. I'll have a better position. I'll have a nicer development, etc., etc. And if he takes, then I'll have this bishop c4 resource. And then the only way he'll be able to defend his f7 square is by playing e6. So I decided to not take this pawn. I decided to let him take my pawn instead because it would weaken his light squares. So I castled here. He took my pawn. I could have recaptured with the knight, or I could have recaptured with the pawn. I chose to recapture with the pawn. I don't know how accurate this was. I think it was better to take with the knight because I noticed this. By taking with the pawn, I let his knight come into g4. I have to retreat my bishop to g1 because otherwise he has too many attackers on this knight on d4. So I had to go back. I had to play knight takes c6 first. If I go to g1 immediately, what happens? Yeah, it was either bishop g1 or move my knight. So I decided to take his knight. I calculated this line through. I saw that if he does anything besides taking my queen, I take his queen, obviously. If he takes my queen and I take back, or if he tries to do something else, I don't know, like say bishop takes here, I could have just taken queen takes e3. So, and I also had like this little idea of the knight takes e7 in betweener move if he decides to not immediately recapture my c6 knight. So that wasn't really a calculated line. That was something that I just noticed. If this queen were ever to move and he tried to make some in-between moves to like capture my hanging e3 bishop, then I wouldn't actually be losing a piece. I'd be winning a pawn since I had already taken his knight, and he needs to recapture. But by playing knight takes e7 check and in-betweener, then he wouldn't be able to recapture. So without fully calculating the line, I could already tell that it was safe, but I did fully calculate it just to double check, because you know your intuition needs to be like checked by actual raw calculation. That's how chess works. So now he could have played this knight f2 fork immediately, but then as I said, I would have had this knight takes e7 check in betweener, saving my knight. Then I could have moved my bishop. He would have taken one of my rooks, and then I would have gotten two pieces, a pawn for a rook, which would be terrible for him. So he didn't go for that, obviously he just took. I had to move my rook out of the way because the only way for me to defend this f2 square was to play bishop to e1. If I played bishop to e1, then he would take this knight. My bishop couldn't recapture since it's overloaded. It's trying to defend this f2 square. I'd have to recapture with my b pawn, and then I'd have awful pawn structure. So I decided to just move a rook instead. I didn't really see this knight f2, bishop d4 idea until he played the move. So here I noticed what he was trying to do. Rook g1, bishop d4. This is pretty solid. So I played bishop e3. Not entirely sure how good that was. Bishop e3 falls victim to bishop takes c3, b takes c3, knight takes e4, which is what happened. Well, I don't know what else I could have done here. Maybe this knight takes e4 wasn't a threat in the first place because he's going to win that pawn anyway. Maybe I should have just played something like knight to e2, hitting the bishop. No, then his bishop would just retreat, and I wouldn't even have this bishop e3 resource anymore. So I suppose what could I have done? G3. No, all of this looks really sketchy to me. Yeah, I can't really see much. I feel like there's no real threats that black has, but his pieces are such a pain in the butt that I kind of want to get rid of them. His bishop's very centralized, his knight's really hindering my rooks from being on squares that they want to be on, and his knights are taking up the light squares for my rooks, and he has a powerful dark square bishop in the action, so he's doing well here. I'd say right now, if we were to put this into Stockfish or Lichess or some sort of chess engine, they'd give black an advantage, maybe like a couple centipawns. So bishop e3 might have been a blunder. I couldn't really see much else. As a human playing this, I was I wasn't able to calculate everything. I was just kind of scared of how good his pieces were. So I was willing to sack that pawn. I noticed that by sacking this pawn and moving my bishop to d4, I'd have a strong bishop controlling his dark squares, which he wasn't, like weaknesses that he's not able to control anymore because of his lack of a dark square bishop. He gave it up for ruining my pawn structure. And I also noticed that this knight is kind of like pinned to this e7 pawn. I think that he tried to hold on to this pawn advantage for too long, and by doing so, he made some weakening moves, like now he's forced to play f5 if he doesn't want to lose this e7 pawn. Bishop to f5 note doesn't work, because as soon as I play g4, I'm attacking the defender of this knight, his bishop has to move, and I take this knight. So, yeah, and he has no good, like, in-betweener moves to save his pieces. So, he had to play f5. Notice the knight can't move anywhere and defend this e7 square. After f5, I looked at g4. It was too appealing to not do. Also, the problem with f5 now is that look at this bishop c4 resource. If his bishop weren't here or this e-pawn weren't here, then I'd be just straight up winning material. My bishop is controlling all of these squares. The other bishop would be controlling all of these squares. Even though I'm a pawn down, now I have serious counterplay just because of how weak he's made his king. And look at these, like literally my bishops would be controlling every single square the king has. So he can never slip up and play bishop to b7 or something, because then after bishop to c4, the only thing he could do is to sack his rook. g4. Idea of g4 is to take and force his bishop out, and I don't know, it was just to weaken his king. So obviously he can't push, he can't take. And I also noticed that if I ever play bishop to c4, he can't play bishop to e6, he has to play e6. And after he plays e6, I can take this pawn for free, because this pawn will be pinned and this pawn will be pinned. And if I were ever able to take this g6 pawn, that would be like a serious attack. Think about it, like here I'll show you a sample variation. Let's say he makes some junk move, a6. Okay, bishop check. Here, another junk move, a5. This obviously wouldn't happen, but like, this is the idea. Pawn takes. Now I have some serious threats. I have pawn takes h7, king here, followed by, I don't know, rook to g7, king moves, rook g8. How is he stopping my pawn from queening? What else do I have? I have, like, if this pawn were to take, rook check, king here, rook here. King doesn't want to go here because of the windmill tactic that I talked about earlier. I could just move my rook to a7 and win this rook with the check. So king here is kind of forced. Then maybe rook to g1. I don't know, this is a pretty devastating attack. So I would have been very comfortable with this position. Let's go back to current. Oh, too far. Okay. So what ended up happening is he played the c5 move, trying to get my bishop off of this diagonal, or if it wasn't to go off this diagonal, I had to play bishop to e5. Problem with bishop to e5 for me was that I was down a pawn right now. I have poor pawn structure. My pawns are loose. This pawn's technically hanging. He can at any time play bishop takes g4 because his bishop is protecting it. And if he does play that and I don't have this knight here, then I'm down 2 pawns. He has a passed pawn. So, like right now I'm just losing if I move this bishop to e5. I want to keep control of this diagonal, but by moving my bishop to e5, this e7 pawn is no longer weak because my bishop's blocking my rook. So I didn't want to go for that. Instead I went for the more attacking variation, playing bishop c4 check, forcing this e6 move. The other alternative is rook to f7. Bishop e6 obviously doesn't work because bishop takes. Also notice if this knight ever gets a move, it can go to f6, and then if this knight gets to f6, then his king's pretty safe again. So I needed to be quick about my attack. I had a little bit of a counterplay and I needed to use it as much as possible. e6, g takes f. Honestly, this was my only chance at winning. I had no other chance. Had I tried to do something like, I don't know, now bishop to e5, then knight f6 again, and I'm screwed. So I can never allow this knight f6 to happen. By playing g takes, if he plays knight f6, I suppose I can now move my bishop, and I'll have won this pawn. These pawns are both pinned, and then I'll have this same thread of same unstoppable thread of pawn takes g6. So yeah, I lost my bishop in this process, which was a nice bishop. It was controlling all these squares, but there was no way to keep it. Because I just didn't have enough time to protect it and accomplish my goal of attacking his king and trying to get counterplay for the lost pawn. Throughout this whole process, I was able to get my pawn back, and I was able to undouble my pawns. And maybe his best move now is king to f7, or doing something to protect this backward e6 pawn, this isolated e6 pawn. But actually, it's gonna fall eventually, because after king to f7, rook to e1, his only way of defending it is rook to f6, and rook to f6 just looks disgusting, because his rook is literally only defending a pawn, and that's its sole purpose. In the endgame, you want your rooks to be active. You want it to be attacking pieces, not defending pieces. So, yeah, I suppose this pawn was either going to fall or he was going to have a terrible position. So he decided to start getting his other rook into the game. Cut me off of this b file. I took this pawn, noticing that after taking this pawn, I have a strong rook. His king is a little bit more out of play than mine is. Mine is like one step more in than his is towards the endgame, towards the action. I can easily double my rooks. He can too, but it doesn't really accomplish much for him. Maybe he could have tried to go to b2. Wouldn't have done much. And now the most important thing is these two connected pass pawns that he does not have. And I do. He has no pass pawns. I have two connected pass pawns. So this is a very one endgame for me. From a totally lost position, by taking this leap of faith and going for this bishop c4 check, in-betweener move, and trying to not hold on to these dark squares, I was able to get myself a winning position by here. So when I played rook to e1, I had this clear threat of rook e7 check attacking these two pawns, but he didn't want to stop that. He wanted to play actively, take this h2 pawn, give himself some pass pawns to work with. I let him do that because I could grab myself the a pawn, and I noticed that my pawns were faster. I wasn't able to calculate it fully, but if you see what ended up happening in the game, he had no way to stop my pawn from queening on a8. So that was the whole game. If you have any questions about specific moves or specific ideas that you want elaborated, please feel free to ask, and I hope you enjoyed. See ya.